Democracy depends on a free press. Please support our independent journalism at democracynow.org/give. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The White House has warned Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to stop criticizing President Trump and sign an agreement to hand over $500 billion of rare earth minerals and other resources as payment for U.S. wartime aid. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz made the threat from the White House briefing room Thursday.
Zelensky publicly rejected this deal about the rare earth minerals. Where does that stand?
Well, we're going to continue to have, he needs to come back to the table, and we're going to continue to have discussions about where that deal is going.
This comes after Trump lashed out at Zelensky, mocking him as a dictator without elections in an error-riddled rant on social media. Zelensky met in Kyiv Thursday with Trump's envoy to Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, but canceled a scheduled joint press conference after the talks. The U.S. has objected to a draft of a G7 resolution calling Russia the aggressor in its invasion of Ukraine. Separately, Reuters reports the U.S. is refusing to co-sponsor a UN motion backing Ukraine on the third anniversary of Russia's invasion. Meanwhile, Russian forces have advanced to within 3 miles of the Ukrainian region of Dnipropetrovsk. On Thursday, a Russian missile killed at least 1 person, wounded 3, when it slammed into an apartment high-rise in the city of Kherson. And the International Atomic Energy Agency is warning the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is currently operating with only 1 off-site power line due to fighting near the complex. Israel's military dropped leaflets across the Gaza Strip on Thursday, openly threatening the territory's entire population of more than 2 million people with forced displacement. The message, written in Arabic, references President Trump's mass expulsion plan with a threat to, quote, impose forced displacement upon you whether you accept it or not, unquote. The message also read, quote, the map of the world will not change if all the people of Gaza disappear from existence and no one will ask about you, unquote. This comes as Israeli officials are casting doubt over whether a prisoner exchange set for Saturday will proceed as planned after Israel claimed one of the 4 bodies handed over by Hamas Thursday was not the body of hostage Shiri Bibas. Hamas says the remains appear to have been mixed with other human remains taken from the rubble left behind by Israeli bombardment. Israeli President Isaac Herzog called it a shocking and horrific violation of the ceasefire agreement, and Trump's special envoy for hostage affairs, Adam Boehler, threatened Hamas with total annihilation. Hamas is due to release 6 living Israeli hostages Saturday in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian captives held by Israel. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he's ordered a stepped-up military operation across the occupied West Bank after 3 parked buses exploded in Bat Yam near Tel Aviv. No one was hurt in the blasts. The Trump administration's imposed sanctions on a Rwandan top official and a senior member of an armed group over their backing of M23 fighters in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The U.S. Treasury Department announced the sanctions Thursday, targeting Rwandan Minister James Kabarebe and Lawrence Kanyuka Kingston, a member of the armed coalition Congo River Alliance, which includes M23. Both men are accused of being central to M23's operations as the group carries out gross human rights abuses. The Treasury Department said in a statement, quote, today's actions underscore the need for Rwanda to return to negotiations under the Angola-led Luanda process to achieve a resolution to the conflict in eastern DRC, unquote. To see our coverage of the Democratic Republic of Congo, go to democracynow.org. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum is warning the United States against any violations of Mexico's sovereignty after the Trump administration designated several drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. President Sheinbaum said Trump officials should refocus resources on investigating groups that are operating and laundering drug money inside the United States. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has not ruled out threats of military action against cartels. This is Mexican President Sheinbaum speaking to reporters Thursday.
El pueblo de México, bajo ninguna circunstancia.
The Mexican people will under no circumstances accept interventions, intrusions, or any other action from abroad that are detrimental to the integrity, independence, or sovereignty of the nation, such as coups, interference in elections, or violations of Mexican territory, whether by land, sea, or air.
The terrorist designation also includes the MS-13 gang, which is predominantly based in El Salvador, and Tren de Aragua in Venezuela. Trump has made false claims about the group's potential threats, wrongfully accusing all asylum seekers and immigrants of being gang members to fuel a racist agenda. The Trump administration said Thursday it had abruptly deported at least 177 Venezuelan immigrants who'd been detained in a newly constructed prison camp at the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Dozens of the Venezuelan immigrants who were forcefully transferred to Guantanamo were accused without evidence of involvement with Tren de Aragua, as Trump claimed to be targeting only the worst of the worst. But recent reports showed many of them had never been convicted of violent crimes. Venezuela's interior minister was at the airport outside Caracas when the U.S. deportation flight arrived on Thursday.
The United States says that there are people from the Tren de Aragua gang and criminals. We checked the first group that they were said to be from Tren de Aragua, and there was no one from there, not one. We're going to check the legal situation of each one of them. Those without a record will go home, and we will take them, and we will take them with care.
Asylum seekers and immigrants have described torturous conditions while on U.S. deportation flights, including being shackled at the ankles, waists, and wrists for hours. This comes as The Guardian reports the corporate conglomerate Akima, charged with running Guantanamo's immigrant detention camp, has been accused of gross human rights abuses over conditions at 3 other immigration jails it oversees. President Trump has rolled back a Biden-era program granting temporary relief from deportations to an estimated 500,000 Haitian immigrants living in the United States. Guerline Joseph, the executive director of the Haitian Bridge Alliance, told the Miami Herald, quote, slashing 6 months of protection while Haiti faces rampant insecurity and a humanitarian crisis is nothing short of a death sentence. This is racism in policy form, and we must resist it at every turn, she said. A federal judge in Washington, D.C. has ordered the Trump administration to comply with his previous court order to at least temporarily unfreeze foreign aid funding. But U.S. District Court Judge Amir Ali stopped short of holding Secretary of State Marco Rubio and acting USAID Director Pete Morocco in contempt of court. Among the many programs impacted by the freeze are HIV and tuberculosis treatment, maternal and newborn health care, and humanitarian aid to 2.6 million people in northeastern Syria. The emergency response rooms in Sudan, a civilian aid group, said the aid freeze is already worsening famine and the world's worst refugee crisis, with the spokesperson telling the New York Times, quote, a week of not finding food would actually mean a lot of death, unquote. A federal judge in Washington, D.C. Thursday denied a request by unions to block the efforts by Elon Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency to drastically slash the size of the federal workforce. In his ruling, U.S. District Judge Christopher Cooper acknowledged the mass firings have already caused disruption and chaos, but said the issue should first be adjudicated by the Federal Labor Relations Authority. Earlier this month, Trump fired the FLRA chairwoman, Susan Sway Grunman, whose tenure was not set to end until July. The U.S. Department of Agriculture's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service has detected H5N1 bird flu in rats for the first time in a Southern California county where 2 recent poultry outbreaks were reported. The discovery comes as the USDA is seeking to rehire bird flu experts recently fired by DOJ. Meanwhile, a newly published CDC study finds 2 dairy workers in Michigan may have infected their pet cats with bird flu, and that one of the infected cats likely passed the virus on to other people. The results of the study were supposed to have been published in January, but were delayed by a blanket pause on CDC communications ordered by President Trump. Billionaire Elon Musk took the stage Thursday at the 2025 Conservative Political Action Conference in Washington, D.C., known as CPAC. Musk was welcomed to the far-right gathering by Argentina's President Javier Milei, who gifted Musk with a chainsaw to celebrate Doge's efforts to shrink the federal workforce while gutting entire government agencies.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy. Chainsaw!
Also appearing at CPAC Thursday were Vice President J.D. Vance and Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson. The Senate has narrowly confirmed Kash Patel as director of the FBI, replacing Trump's former pick, Christopher Wray, who resigned his post just ahead of Trump's inauguration. Patel is a Trump loyalist, far-right conspiracy theorist who previously called for the FBI's D.C. office to be closed and the next day turned into a museum of the deep state. Democratic Senator Dick Durbin spoke out against Patel ahead of Thursday's vote.
It is shocking that my Republican colleagues are willing to support him, despite the serious threat he poses to our national security. And I'm sorry to say I believe they will quickly come to regret this vote. When I think of giving this man a 10-year tenure as director of the leading criminal investigative agency in the world, I cannot imagine a worse choice.
Patel's confirmation came on a vote of 51 to 49, with the Republican Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski voting against him. Vice President J.D. Vance, who was across town attending Thursday's CPAC conference, was not needed to break a Senate tie after Kentucky Republican, former Senate leader Mitch McConnell, voted in favor of Patel's nomination. McConnell announced Thursday he would not seek re-election in 2026 when his term expires. The Senate has approved a $340 billion budget blueprint to fund the first part of President Trump's agenda. The resolution passed on a largely party-line vote of 52 to 48 after a marathon overnight voting session known as a vote-a-rama. It includes $175 billion for border operations and mass deportations, as well as $150 billion in new Department of Defense spending. This comes after the House Republicans unveiled a draft budget proposing $4.5 trillion in tax cuts and at least $1.5 trillion in spending cuts, including to Medicaid and food assistance. The Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions voted along party lines Thursday to advance Linda McMahon's nomination to serve as Education Secretary, bringing her closer to heading the agency President Trump has repeatedly threatened to shut down. McMahon is the former CEO of World Wrestling Entertainment. She and her husband, Vince McMahon, were recently sued for failing to stop a WWE ringside announcer from sexually assaulting young boys. New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced Thursday she will not invoke her authority to remove embattled New York City Mayor Eric Adams from office. Adams is up for re-election this year and faces a crowded primary in June. Murad Awalda, president of the New York Immigration Coalition, said in response, quote, Eric Adams sold out New Yorkers to avoid prosecution for corruption charges in a quid pro quo deal with the Trump administration, plain and simple. Now he's working with the Trump administration to separate families in New York City in direct violation of our local sanctuary policies. All New Yorkers will face real and dire consequences from Governor Hochul's refusal to hold the mayor accountable for his actions, he said. Protests are planned for Saturday at noon in Washington Square Park to demand Mayor Eric Adams' removal from office. Here in New York, Luigi Mangione, the 26-year-old suspect in the shooting death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, will appear in a Manhattan court today as he faces murder and terror state charges. This is Mangione's first hearing since his arraignment in December. A trial has not yet been set. Officials at the Vatican say Pope Francis's health is improving after the 88-year-old pontiff was hospitalized for double pneumonia and asthmatic bronchitis. But for the first time, cardinals acknowledge Pope Francis' resignation due to his ailing health is a possibility. And today marks the 60th anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X, one of the most influential political figures of the 20th century. Malcolm X was shot dead as he spoke before a packed audience at the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem, February 21st, 1965. He'd just taken the stage when shots rang out, riddling his body with bullets. He was 39 years old. Two of the three men convicted of Malcolm X's assassination were exonerated in 2021 after decades in jail and decades of advocacy on behalf of the men, Muhammad Aziz and Khalil Islam. And after a 2-year investigation by the Manhattan DA's office, and the Innocence Project found the prosecutors, the FBI, and the New York Police Department omitted key evidence around the murder. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today at democracynow.org/give.